Investing in your favorite show can require a lot of time, attention, and in some cases, peanuts. Fans may have enjoyed the journeys these beloved shows sent them on, but none of them were quite able to reach their final destination. Most shows can only ever dream of reaching the peaks that Westworld once enjoyed. Created by Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy, the series was adapted from the 1973 film of the same name, written and directed by Michael Crichton. The ambitious sci-fi series chronicled an android uprising that begins in the immersive western theme park of Westworld before it radiates out beyond the park's borders. When it premiered, the show shot to the forefront of pop culture discourse, and its creators made it clear that the show was heading towards a clear ending point. But by the fourth season in 2022, ratings and critical interest were both down from the show's glory days. The show's timeline was getting more and more convoluted by jumping all over the place, and both Joy and Nolan were publicly hoping that HBO would allow them a fifth and final season to wrap up their story. Fans expected the show's success had earned it the right to finish on its own terms, but HBO disagreed and canceled the series.
Never place your trust in us. We're only human. Inevitably, we will disappoint you.
At the time, there was talk of moving the series to another network to let Nolan and Joy tie up the show's loose ends, but with its high production costs and in-demand ensemble cast, Westworld really had nowhere to go. When it comes to the multitude of DC comic-based superhero shows that were developed by the CW, Legends of Tomorrow is one that stands out as having forged its own path. Originally spawned as part of the Arrowverse, the show shifted locations, tones, characters, and perspectives to tell a sweeping, epic, time-hopping tale over 7 seasons that was often comedic, metafictional, and just plain weird. The show developed a strong core of fans throughout its run, but they proved helpless as the winds began changing around DC Comics adaptations. By 2022, the Arrowverse was winding down, the CW was changing direction, and most importantly, James Gunn had begun work on building a new shared universe via DC Studios, including new TV projects. That meant that despite enthusiastic fan campaigns to save the series and get answers to a Season 7 finale with plenty of loose ends, Legends was not renewed by the CW.
All right, yes, you're right.
A fictionalized version of a real 1980s professional wrestling promotion, Glow arrived on Netflix in 2017 and quickly became one of the streamer's most acclaimed shows. With a deft balance of comedy and drama and an ensemble cast led by Alison Brie and Betty Gilpin, the series immediately won fans over. After 3 seasons, Glow was renewed for a 4th by Netflix in late 2019 and entered production on that 4th season in early 2020, aka prime COVID-19 pandemic time. In the fall of 2020, citing higher production costs and the difficulty of making the show under COVID safety conditions, Netflix made the shocking decision to rescind its Season 4 order, canceling the series. Brie told Collider that the cast had been able to shoot the first 1.5 episodes of the season before the shutdown, but the cancellation makes it more than likely that those episodes, quote, will never see the light of day. Given that everyone involved has moved on to many other projects since then, it's safe to consider Glow done for good. Created by Brian Fuller and adapted from Thomas Harris's Hannibal Lecter novels, the serial killer drama Hannibal followed Dr. Hannibal Lecter and FBI investigator Will Graham as they engaged in an elaborate, twisty cat-and-mouse game across 3 unforgettable seasons. Hannibal was met with critical acclaim upon its release, but despite energetic support on social media and 2 renewals from NBC, the show was not picked up for a 4th season. This was especially frustrating to fans because the show ended with a near-literal cliffhanger after Hannibal and Will went plunging off a cliff. The late 2000s CBS drama Jericho had a great plot, but the successful campaign to save the show might be just as good of a story. Set in a fictional Kansas town left cut off from the world by a nuclear attack on major US cities, the series debuted in 2006 and quickly won fans for its story of a small society trying to get back on its feet and the unique ways it introduced new mysteries and threats into the plot. But apparently not enough viewers got hooked, and Jericho was canceled at the end of its 1st season. In response, fans launched a massive campaign to save it, referencing a line in the season finale by sending tons of peanuts and thousands of emails to CBS.
Jake, I need an answer. What's it gonna be? Nuts.
After being inundated with nuts, CBS acquiesced and renewed the show, only for it to be met with more low ratings. Jericho was canceled again, this time for good, and there weren't enough peanuts available to convince a production company to revive the show as a feature film. Overseen by director and executive producer David Fincher, Mindhunter emerged in 2017 as the ultimate prestige drama for true crime fans. Based on the non-fiction book of the same name, The series followed the rise of the FBI's behavioral science unit through fictionalized versions of real people, diving deep into the psyches of some of America's most notorious serial killers. The show was an immediate hit for Netflix, but after 2 acclaimed seasons, Mindhunter was put on hold while Fincher went to work on film projects like Mank. In the meantime, the actors were released from their contracts so that they could pursue other projects, and it now appears that the creative team simply drifted too far apart. There was no official cancellation, but as more time passed after the release of Season 2 in 2019, it started to look like the show was doomed to fade into non-existence. In 2023, Fincher essentially announced a time of death on the series, citing the cost of the show and the energy it required to get each season rolling. Originally planned as a 5-part story told across 5 seasons, the OA came out of the gate swinging for the fences with big ideas. The series followed a blind woman named Prairie, who returns after a 7-year absence with mysteriously restored sight and a new identity as the OA. She goes on to recruit a group of followers to help her in defeating her captor, saving missing people, and even hopping dimensions. The show was critically acclaimed and found a devoted following online, but despite a Season 2 cliffhanger that took things into metafictional territory, Netflix decided not to push forward with Season 3. At the time, some fans hoped that the cancellation news was part of an elaborate meta-conspiracy as the show continued to bend the reality of its narrative. But in 2019, Prairie's real-life counterpart and co-creator Britt Marling addressed fans of the series directly to confirm that the OA was indeed over. Unless that's just what she wants us to think. A horror comedy series that took typical sitcom formulas and added lots of gory bites, Santa Clarita Diet earned both critical acclaim and lots of fans when it arrived on Netflix in 2017. It starred Drew Barrymore as Sheila, a seemingly ordinary housewife who becomes a zombie and must eat human flesh while she and her family keep up appearances around her neighborhood.
Well, she is dead? And also undead. What the f?
With the show's future in question, creator Victor Fresco and his team deliberately wrote Season 3 to end on a cliffhanger that changed Sheila's family dynamic forever in the hope that an unresolved narrative would entice Netflix to renew the series one more time. But in the end, the company didn't bite, pun intended, and the series was canceled. Another Brian Fuller-created series that earned a rabid fan base and went through lots of revival talk was 2007's Pushing Daisies. Set in and around an idyllic bakery, the series was part murder mystery, part romance. It followed a pie maker named Ned, who has the strange ability to bring dead people back to life with a single touch and send them back to the land of the dead with a second touch. When he touches his deceased childhood sweetheart and brings her back to life, Ned realizes he's still in love with her and can therefore never touch her lest she shuffle off her mortal coil yet again. This gripping premise, coupled with the show's quirky sense of humor and beautiful production design, made Pushing Daisies a critically acclaimed darling when it premiered. But by the end of the 2nd season, time slot shifts and declining ratings meant that ABC did not renew the show for a 3rd. With lots of story left to potentially continue the series, Fuller explored various other options, including a comic book series and a possible Broadway musical, both of which went nowhere. In the end, Pushing Daisies found itself relegated to cult classic status and left fans wanting more. Fresh off the highs of The Sopranos and Sex and the City, HBO started taking more chances with its programming. To this day, Carnivale remains one of the strangest creative leaps in the network's history. Created by Daniel Knopf and premiering in 2003, the period fantasy drama was set in the Dust Bowl in 1930s America. The series set up an epic battle between good and evil framed through the story of a traveling carnival, featuring a young man with healing powers who joins its show, and a menacing radio preacher who shares his dark visions of a coming struggle. Rich with period detail and slowly weaving its own complex mythology into its storytelling, Carnivale rewarded close viewing and earned devoted fans. Sadly, HBO canceled the series after 2 seasons, citing the massive production costs of the period setting and the huge ensemble cast. Despite fan efforts to save the series, Carnivale never returned to finish its story, though Knopf and Company did shed light on the larger mythology in subsequent years by putting the original series pitch document online for fans to see. Freaks and Geeks now has the well-established legacy of being a springboard to some of this generation's best comedic talent. But to anyone who has actually watched the series, the show itself is a modern classic. Set in the early 1980s in Michigan, it followed a group of teenagers as they dealt with the highs and lows of high school life. Despite early critical acclaim and even an Emmy win, the show's erratic scheduling by NBC, coupled with initial low ratings, meant that only a fraction of the episodes produced were aired. Creator Paul Feig and producer Judd Apatow later revealed that the show had a chance at a second life over at MTV, but they declined due to what would have been a dramatic reduction of the series' budget. Today, Freaks and Geeks will forever be unfinished, but its legacy is secure because of everything its cast and crew has done since. Lois and Clark had a pretty good run in the mid-1990s. Starring Terry Hatcher and Dean Cain as the title characters, the ABC series focused on the romance between Lois Lane and Clark Kent, with lots of Superman adventures thrown in. At its peak, it was one of the most talked about shows on television, but then came the 4th season. The show kept stumbling, and attempts to move it around into new time slots meant that it was harder for viewers to find in the pre-DVR and streaming era, which caused the ratings to slip even more. In the end, not even a cliffhanger featuring a Kryptonian baby could save the show. The characters of Superman and Lois Lane live on in countless other adaptations, but if you're itching for more from this particular universe, there are tie-in novels and comics to be found for those willing to look.